The Atlantic lay silent, a gray expanse stretching endlessly. The U-530 cut through the waves, its steel hull groaning under the pressure of the deep. Inside, the crew moved with quiet precision, senses, sharp eyes scanning the dark waters. Every shadow, every ripple a potential threat. Then it appeared, a shadow, enormous, longer than the submarine itself, gliding beneath the surface with an impossible grace. The sonar flickered, numbers and signals scrambled. No instrument could measure it. No mind could comprehend it. The men froze, silence heavier than the ocean itself. Whispers barely audible. "It cannot be real," one muttered. Yet the unease spread like a tide. Hands clenched, hearts pounding. The presence beneath was patient, immense, and somehow intelligent. Watching, waiting. The shadow passed. Water calmed, yet the dread lingered, a residue of fear that could not be washed away. Across the Atlantic in those final desperate days of the war, reports of strange phenomena began to surface. Submarines disappearing, vessels reporting massive, unidentifiable objects, sonar readings that made no sense. No official record preserved these events, only fragments of logs, hastily written testimonies, whispers of sailors who swore they had seen something beyond reason. The ocean was a vault, keeping secrets buried in its black depths. But on the U-530, the shadow left a mark, etched into memory, a seed of legend, a story that would echo long after the war, that something colossal lurked beneath the waves, something ancient, something not meant to be seen. And in the hushed corridors of the submarine, the men could not shake the feeling that eyes unseen followed them, as if the Atlantic itself had become alive, stretching, watching, and waiting. Then came the first real panic. Instruments began failing, lights flickered, a low metallic groan ran through the hull. Some swore it was the submarine itself, others claimed it was the shadow brushing against them. Too massive, too close, to be anything natural. A chill ran down every spine, and in that silence a question formed in every mind. What had they awakened in the depths? What ancient presence had stirred beneath them? Whispers of the Leviathan of the Atlantic, a creature older than memory, returned to haunt the war-torn waters. It was May 1945, the final days of the war. The Atlantic was a graveyard of steel and shadow. U-530, one of the last operational submarines of the Kriegsmarine, slipped through cold, gray waters. The sky hung low. A heavy overcast pressed down on the deck. Salt spray stung faces, and every man aboard felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Captain Otto Wormuth paced the bridge, eyes scanning the horizon, tension etched into every line of his face. The crew moved with practiced silence, each man aware that the war was ending. Yet danger lingered, not just from the Allies, but from the unknown, lurking beneath the waves. Records show that the U-530 had departed Kiel weeks earlier. The mission was classified, orders vague, routes secret. Every report emphasized secrecy. The men were trained to obey, to record only what was necessary. Yet the ocean had other plans. Sailors' diaries from the voyage described the monotony, the creaking of the hull, the endless gray, broken only by strange phenomena, lights flickering on instruments, sudden drops in temperature, water turbulence where none should exist. Locals along the coast whispered tales of massive shapes glimpsed beneath the waves, legends older than the war. The Leviathan of the Atlantic, they called it, an entity that moved with stealth, silent and immense, appearing only when men dared traverse forbidden waters. Even among the crew, unease grew. strange sounds echoing through the hull, shadows in the sonar feed, inexplicable disturbances. Some men chalked it up to nerves. Others whispered prayers, invoking saints and old myths, hoping to placate what they could not understand. Maps marked the routes, yet nothing could account for what lay beneath. Sonar readings reported anomalies, larger than any known creature, moving in patterns that seemed deliberate, almost intelligent. The U-530 was not just navigating water, it was navigating legend. As days passed, the shadow that had first appeared became a looming presence. The ocean itself seemed to respond, currents shifting unnaturally, waves forming without wind, a reminder that the Atlantic held secrets older than mankind, and that U-530 had entered a domain beyond comprehension. Night fell, and the Atlantic became a black mirror, the submarine's lights cutting through the darkness, but revealing nothing, only the endless expanse. Some men claimed they could hear whispers, faint echoes carried by the water, voices of sailors long gone, lost in the depths, warning or mocking. It was impossible to tell. The captain ordered logs to be double-checked, instruments recalibrated, yet the anomalies persisted. Crew members noted compasses spinning, clocks slowing. Time seemed to stretch differently when the shadow was near, a phenomenon that defied explanation. One morning, a lookout spotted something breaking the surface. A ripple, massive, like the wake of a colossal beast, fleeting yet undeniable. Hearts raced. The presence beneath was becoming bolder, closer, asserting itself in ways the men could no longer ignore. Whispers of superstition mingled with fact. Sailors spoke of ancient sea monsters, of guardians of the deep, of curses cast over ships that dared trespass. Old tales from Nordic fishermen, warnings of things that lurk beneath the waves, all seemed to resurface, merging with the reality aboard U-530. By mid-voyage, morale was strained. Fear had woven itself into the daily routine. Men avoided eye contact. Footsteps echoed in empty corridors. Even laughter sounded hollow. The shadow had changed the ship. It was no longer just a vessel. It was a stage, and the unseen actor beneath. The star. Some men attempted to document everything. Sketches, notes, sonar readings. Yet when logs were reviewed, pages were missing. Instruments had been wiped clean. Only memories remained, fragmentary, haunting, impossible to verify. And still, the Atlantic stretched endlessly, indifferent, alive, patient, hiding its secrets in black waters. U-530 pressed onward, men on edge, minds straining, wondering if what they chased, or what chased them, was a creature, a phenomenon, or something far older, far darker than they could imagine. Logs from the U-530 documented the day-to-day of the voyage with meticulous care. Every detail from engine vibrations to course corrections was recorded. Yet amid these ordinary entries, anomalies began to appear. Sonar readings fluctuated inexplicably. Instruments reported objects of immense size, larger than any known submarine or ship. Captain Wormuth noted in his personal journal, May 14th, "Sonar shows shadow moving beneath, length greater than our vessel, speed unknown, crew uneasy, we are watched." These were official records, though many sections were later censored or missing. Only fragments survived. Daily reports from the crew confirmed strange occurrences. Lights would flicker without cause. Temperature dropped suddenly in certain compartments. Water currents shifted under the submarine. These anomalies were consistent across multiple days, multiple observers, multiple logs. Naval archives later revealed references to similar sightings. Other German submarines like U-977 recorded unidentifiable masses moving in coordinated patterns, sonar unable to define size or shape. Yet official historians often dismiss these notes as errors, technical glitches, or psychological strain. Eyewitness testimonies survived partially. Sailors recalled shadows under the hull, dark, immense, moving faster than anything natural. It passed beneath us silently, and then it was gone, as if the ocean itself swallowed it. One crewman noted no one spoke for hours, a presence, too immense, too alive. Technical diagrams of the U-530's sonar logs show erratic blips, streaks of light or dark, interpreted by modern analysts as objects exceeding 200 feet in length, something that could not be measured with standard 1945 technology. Yet contemporaneous investigators found no debris, no photographic evidence, only reports and erased records. Ship manifests and patrol logs confirm the route. U-530 traveled from Kiel through the North Sea, down the Atlantic, off the coast of Argentina. Every waypoint aligns with reports of strange, unexplained sonar activity, yet no other naval vessel corroborated the sightings, creating a vacuum of evidence. Newspaper clippings from Allied intelligence at the time mention unidentified objects near submarine routes, unexplained disappearances, unusual sea phenomena. Though often buried in microfilm archives, these fragments suggest multiple observers witnessed something extraordinary. Medical logs also recorded unusual stress symptoms among the crew: anxiety, insomnia, palpitations. Some men spoke of seeing shadows inside the submarine, reflections in portholes that weren't theirs. Mental strain compounded by the unknown. Official correspondence between U-530 and headquarters reveals orders to maintain silence about these sightings. Report only standard activity, ignore anomalies, focus on mission parameters. Yet the men knew the shadow was real, and it was not just a trick of the mind. Further investigation into post-war reports shows that U-530 arrived in Argentina under mysterious circumstances. The vessel surrendered without damage, yet the journey logs were incomplete. Gaps in time that raise questions. What occurred in those missing days? And what had been following them? Interviews with surviving crew members decades later hint at their reluctance to speak. We were told to forget, to obey, but some of us never forgot. The shadow beneath, the immense shape. It left an impression no one could erase. Their words echo the fragments of official records, creating a tapestry of fact, interwoven with fear. Cross-referencing Allied and German records reveals that multiple submarine routes reported similar anomalies. Strange sonar readings, massive objects moving silently beneath. Yet no conventional explanation existed. The evidence is patchy, inconsistent, but persistent, enough to suggest something real. Even modern analysts reviewing the logs remark on the impossibility of the sightings. Objects moving faster than known sea creatures, exhibiting intelligence, avoidance patterns, sonar anomalies that defy physics. These data points, fragmented as they are, cannot be dismissed entirely. By the end of the voyage, the U-530 crew was marked, physically intact, but mentally changed. Records show signs of fatigue, fear, and unusual behavior. The shadow of the unknown had traveled with them, and would remain in their memories forever. Long before the war, the Atlantic was said to be a domain of ancient creatures. Whispers passed along fishing villages, tales of leviathans, shadows beneath the waves, guardians older than memory. Stories told by Nordic fishermen spoke of immense shapes that would drag ships down, vanishing without a trace. Their warnings were simple: respect the ocean, or face its wrath. Even among German sailors, old superstitions lingered. Some believed the sea itself had eyes, that every submarine, every vessel was being watched by entities that existed before humans walked the earth. They told stories of shadowy forms, appearing during times of conflict, as if the chaos above drew attention from below. Legends called them the silent hunters, massive patient, moving in perfect coordination, always unseen until too late. Some accounts described them as stretching longer than any ship, dark as oil, impossibly fast, able to vanish in an instant, a presence that inspired awe and terror in equal measure. Whispers in port towns along the Atlantic hinted that certain submarines like U-530 had glimpsed these shadows, men returning with strange expressions, eyes wide, refusing to speak of what they saw. Some said the crew muttered of ancient wrath and sea ghosts. Others claimed they carried talismans, charms meant to protect them from the unseen. Even the Allies' intelligence files contained strange annotations, unexplained disturbances, references to phantom masses and objects too large to identify. Analysts dismissed these as errors, yet folklore filled the gaps left by fact. Every missing log, every erased sonar report, fueled legend. Some survivors decades later told journalists that on quiet nights, the ocean seemed to breathe, shadows passing beneath, leaving trails of darkness in the water. They spoke of a silent presence, not malicious, but indifferent. Testing, observing, perhaps curious, or perhaps warning. Maritime superstition also spoke of the Leviathan's pact. Ships that entered certain waters would be spared only if the crew showed humility, obeyed rituals, avoided arrogance. Those who ignored these rules were never heard from again. The U-530 sailing through uncharted depths may have unknowingly crossed such a boundary. Even today, the legends persist, in whispered accounts of sailors, in folklore from the coasts of Europe and South America. Names like the Leviathan of the Atlantic, the Silent Hunter, or the Shadow that Stretched, all describe the same presence, a being that has haunted human imagination for centuries. Folklore blends with fact. Sonar blips, missing logs, anxious eyes, create a tapestry where reality and myth intertwine. The crew of U-530 became part of that tapestry, their fear, their awe, preserved in fragments of record and in the stories passed down, as if the ocean itself demanded that the legend survive. And so, as the submarine pressed onward, the shadow beneath grew larger in memory than in reality. The folklore seeped into every thought, every glance toward the dark waters. It was no longer just a vessel navigating the Atlantic. It was a stage for an ancient myth, alive and waiting. Fishermen in distant ports would swear to hear the sound of metal scraping beneath the waves, a low, haunting echo. Some claimed it was the shadow communicating, or marking its territory. The story spread and grew, fed by fear, by wonder, by the unknown. Legends even told of sailors vanishing without trace, whole crews swallowed by the sea, leaving only tales of the shadow. A warning carried across generations, a reminder that the Atlantic was older and infinitely more powerful than any human endeavor. In the homes of retired sailors, the tales persisted, tales of unspoken encounters, glimpses of movement beneath the waves, strange currents that defied logic, and an ever-present feeling of being watched, studied, by something alive and vast. Some folklore suggested that the Leviathan only revealed itself to those who were unprepared, to test courage, to teach humility, or perhaps to simply remind humanity of its place. These stories echoed with the testimonies of the U-530 crew, blending fear and awe into a narrative that would outlast the war itself. And so, as night fell across the Atlantic, as waves lapped against the hull, And as shadows stretched beneath the submarine, the legend of the Leviathan of the Atlantic was cemented, part fact, part folklore, impossible to separate, yet impossible to forget. As the U-530 pressed further into the Atlantic, reports of similar anomalies began to appear, from other submarines, other vessels, distant ports. Patterns emerged, a motif repeated across space and time, shadows moving beneath the waves, objects too large, too swift, too deliberate, to be natural. In the years following the war, stories circulated of U-977, of other German submarines that had experienced the same, sonar readings spiking, instruments failing, crew members reporting enormous shadows beneath their hulls. These accounts echoed the U-530 reports, creating a thread, a bridge between fact and legend. Historians often dismissed these similarities, technical malfunctions, mass hysteria, yet the crew's testimonies suggested otherwise. Their experiences were too consistent, too specific, details aligned, the shape of the shadows, the timing, the eerie silence that followed, all pointing to a pattern, a presence. The Atlantic in these narratives became more than a body of water. It became a stage, a testing ground for the unseen, a domain where vessels were measured not just by their engineering, but by the courage of those aboard, and by the patience of whatever lurked beneath. Local folklore passed down along European and South American coasts spoke of guardians, ancient leviathans, creatures that watched humanity's intrusion, enforcing rules older than any treaty or naval law. Sailors who had ventured too far, or with too much pride, were never heard from again, creating a chilling precedent for U-530. Even Allied intelligence reports acknowledged anomalies, unexplained sonar readings, objects moving in synchronized patterns, sudden temperature drops, vanishing shadows larger than any known sea creature. These fragmented records, buried deep in archives, formed a bridge between documented fact and whispered legend. Maritime superstition suggested that certain times and locations intensified encounters. When the ocean was calm, when currents shifted, when the moonlight struck the waves at a particular angle. It was as if the Atlantic itself conspired to reveal its secrets, selectively, to those who dared traverse its depths. As the U-530 journeyed south toward Argentina, the bridge between fact and folklore became uncomfortably tangible. Shadows beneath the hull, instruments behaving strangely, crew members whispering of things unseen, yet orders dictated silence. Reports of the unknown were to be minimized, dismissed, erased. Decades later, historians and cryptozoologists would study these events, searching for patterns, for motifs. The bridge was clear, not just a single anomaly, but a recurring presence, tied to human vessels, to war, to fear and awe, a phenomenon that persisted in reports, in folklore, in the memories of those who lived it. Some accounts suggested that the shadow moved with intent, shadowing the submarine's course, appearing and disappearing as if testing the crew, measuring reactions. The sea itself seemed alive, reacting to the presence of men, their machines, their fear. Local fishermen spoke of distant lights, fleeting glimpses of shapes beneath the waves, too large to be whales, too fast to be ordinary marine life. Each story mirrored what the U-530 crew experienced, as if the Atlantic had a memory, a consciousness, and it remembered every intrusion. Legends told of vessels that vanished completely, swallowed by the deep. Their crew never recovered. The shadow beneath U-530 was, according to folklore, a sentinel, ensuring that certain boundaries were not crossed, a reminder that the ocean held power older than nations, older than war, even decades later. Sonar enthusiasts and historians analyzing Atlantic patrol routes found recurring anomalies. Areas where ships reported objects of impossible size, locations that coincided with tales of disappearances and mysterious lights. The pattern suggested more than coincidence, and so the U-530's voyage became a pivotal story, connecting eyewitness testimony, naval records, and folklore, a bridge between the real and the mythical, a journey through history, into legend, into the unknown. The Atlantic's dark waters were more than sea. They were a canvas for fear, wonder, and the unexplained. The tension on U-530 had reached a breaking point. Every creak of the hull, every flicker of the instruments, felt magnified, as if the submarine itself was aware of the presence beneath. Shadows moved in impossible patterns, sonar readings spiking unpredictably, some showing objects longer than the vessel, faster than any known sea creature. One night a lookout swore he saw it, a massive dark form gliding silently beneath the submarine, following, mirroring its every turn. The water around it churned, creating turbulence with no apparent cause. The man's voice trembled as he reported it, but even as he spoke, the shadow vanished, leaving only uncertainty and fear. In the captain's log entries became frantic, instruments failing, lights flickering, temperature anomalies inside the compartments. May 16th. Shadow beneath. Crew shaken, impossible to measure, recording every detail. Some pages were later erased, others marked confidential. The evidence fragmented, but the terror was real. Crew testimonies conflicted. Some claimed the shadow was alive, intelligent, observing their every move. Others insisted it was a massive natural phenomenon, a creature, something from the depths. Yet no one could agree. Every description aligned only in one terrifying detail: its size and its silence. As the days passed, the shadow grew bolder, brushing beneath the hull, causing vibrations, leaving trails of disturbed water. Crew members whispered of the Leviathan watching us, invoking prayers, talismans, even rituals, hoping to appease what they could not understand. Yet nothing worked. The presence remained, patient, omnipresent. Sonar logs and technical diagrams reveal objects moving in ways defying physics. Turns too sharp, accelerations too sudden, traces appearing and disappearing, as if testing the submarine's limits. The Atlantic itself seemed alive, reacting, responding, mocking the humans who intruded. At one point, the captain ordered the submarine to dive deeper, perhaps to escape, perhaps to confront. But even at depth, the shadow was there, waiting. A colossal silhouette beneath them, stretching longer than any man could imagine, brushing past the hull, leaving a chill in the water, a residue of fear. Some crew members claimed to hear sounds, low metallic groans, echoes in the water, voices of men long lost, or warnings from something ancient. It is testing us, observing, recording. One whispered in a diary entry, the handwriting shaky, the words barely legible, and then, as if punctuating the terror, logs record a sudden disappearance, a moment when sonar readings showed nothing, the shadow gone, instruments silent. Yet the crew knew it had been there, closer than ever. They were left with only memory, awe, and a lingering dread that could not be shaken. The Atlantic had proven it was more than water, more than currents, more than a battlefield for men. It was a realm of the unknown, a place where fact and folklore merged, where a submarine could witness the impossible, and carry the memory of it forever. The crew's sleep became haunted, nightmares merging with reality, visions of massive shapes, glowing eyes beneath the hull, endless, dark, patient. They awoke drenched in sweat, hearts racing, convinced the shadow had returned, waiting in silence. Some reported mechanical failures coinciding with the shadow's approach, engines sputtering, valves malfunctioning, sonar flickering, compasses spinning. A pattern emerged, as if the presence manipulated not just water, but machinery, bending the environment itself to its will. An officer recalled seeing a wake, enormous and fast, a movement beneath the hull, impossible to avoid, brushing past the submarine with such force that the water shook. The sensation lingered, vibrating in every deck plank, in every nerve. In the mess hall, whispers spread. Men huddled together, sharing glimpses, stories of the impossible. Some saw shadows along the corridors, fleeting, yet unmistakable. It follows us, even inside. One man muttered, drawing uneasy nods from the rest. The submarine's instruments recorded irregular energy readings, blips that could not be explained, as if some form of intelligence measured the vessel's movements, recording, calculating, waiting for the right moment. Crew members noted the uncanny timing. The shadow always appeared at precise moments, at turns, at depth changes, at moments of decision. It seemed aware, anticipatory, not random. A predator, or perhaps a sentinel of the deep. The diaries tell of a day when multiple crewmen simultaneously observed it, a form stretching longer than the hull, black as ink, undulating beneath them, its sheer size making the submarine seem fragile. It passed silently, leaving a trail of disturbed water, a reminder of its dominance. Even the most skeptical men began to whisper prayers. Some touched old charms, some recited verses, anything to soothe the unknown. Nothing stopped it, nothing altered its course, only patience and observation, as if the shadow waited for them to understand, or perhaps to fail. And so, by the end of this harrowing sequence, the U-530 had been changed, forever marked. The shadow beneath had tested their limits, blurred the line between human comprehension and the unimaginable, leaving behind not just fear, but a story, one that would echo through decades and become legend. The Atlantic grew quiet, almost unnaturally so. The U-530 had survived, its hull intact, its crew exhausted, forever marked by what they had seen. Shadows beneath the waves, massive, patient, waiting. The ocean seemed calm, yet the memory of the presence lingered, a weight in the water and in their minds. As the submarine approached Argentina, the journey's end offered no relief. Whispers of the impossible clung to the crew, stories shared in hushed tones, eyes darting toward every ripple, every darkening swell. They knew the shadow had not left, only waited, biding its time. Local legends began to merge with what had been witnessed. Fishermen spoke of lights moving beneath the waves at night, colossal shapes glimpsed only for moments. The Leviathan of the Atlantic, a guardian, a test, a remnant of a world older than humans. Some said it appeared when war was near, when chaos stirred the seas. Even decades later, researchers and historians pieced together fragments of logs, testimonies, sonar anomalies. A pattern emerged, repeated sightings, erased evidence. The fact and the folklore intertwined, a tapestry that could not be unraveled. The crew of the U-530 would never speak fully. Some refused interviews, Others spoke only in fragments. It follows you, even when the ocean is silent. One man murmured, a warning carried through generations. Their memories had become legend, part fear, part awe, part something unknowable, and still. The Atlantic stretches, dark and endless, silently hiding its inhabitants, its secrets. The Leviathan, or whatever it truly was, waits beneath the waves, patient, watching, perhaps testing the courage of those who dare traverse its depths. What truly lies beneath, no one can say. What humans have recorded is fragmentary, incomplete, a shadow of the unimaginable. And yet, the story endures, in logs, in folklore, in the echoes of those who survived. Perhaps the U-530 was fortunate. Perhaps it was chosen. Or perhaps the shadow allows witnesses only to remind humanity that the ocean is alive, that it remembers, that it waits for the next intrusion. Some sailors claimed to see shapes in the mist, dark silhouettes moving alongside the hull, vanishing before instruments could measure them. Their presence was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet deeply unsettling, a reminder of what lurks beneath. Fishermen in distant harbors told of strange patterns in the waves, lights shimmering at night, shadows too large to be whales. Whispers of the Leviathan persisted, the myth growing with every retelling, entwining with the memories of the U-530 crew. Even modern sonar tests along the Atlantic routes revealed anomalies, echoes of the past, blips that could not be explained, fragments of movement, remnants of the shadow, suggesting that whatever the U-530 encountered still waits beneath the surface, silent, patient, eternal. And so the story of U-530 remains, a bridge between fact and folklore, between history and myth. The Atlantic hides its secrets. The shadow endures, watching, recording, waiting. And those who dare sail its depths may yet witness the impossible. You have just heard another file from Classified Chronicles, a voyage into the unknown, a shadow stretching longer than the submarine itself. If you wish to uncover more, subscribe and follow the archives. The Atlantic still holds its secrets, and one day, you may glimpse the unimaginable. The memory of the shadow lingers in the minds of the crew, a haunting presence that no log could fully capture. No testimony could completely convey. Only the ocean knows its full truth. Silent, patient, vast. Some accounts hint that the shadow returned sporadically, years later, near old shipping lanes, stirring rumors, reigniting fear. The Leviathan was never seen directly again, yet its legend grew, fueled by fragments of truth and whispers of witnesses. And finally, the Atlantic waits, a dark expanse, full of history, full of secrets. And somewhere, just below the surface, the shadow persists, a reminder that the world beneath the waves is older, deeper, and far more mysterious than anyone can imagine.